Perfect. Well, hello everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. We're very excited to be back here for this series of webinars and workshops with our friends at Vectorworks, who, as you may know, is a global design and BIM software developer that, just like the IIS, is looking to upskill the next generation of designers. Vectorworks is a proud sponsor of the IIS since 2018, helping us propel students to the forefront of the design and architecture professions by engaging them on various aspects of their software. Our series of webinars this year is nearing its end. We only have one more left after this, unfortunately. And that is because today we are diving into the first part of the two-part series titled Design, Document, and Visualize Your Project using Vectorworks, in which you'll be discovering how modeling, drawing, and rendering workflows in Vectorworks can help you impress your professors and wow your classmates. Please welcome Ryan Butler, Architect Product Specialist at Vectorworks, who is here to take us on a step-by-step through the process of designing a project and creating great presentations for your critiques using only one software, Vectorworks. Thank you, Ryan, for being here once again. I'm very excited to hear what you have for us today. The floor is all yours.
Hi, everyone. Great intro. This is the first part of a two-part series. This is going to be kind of a walkthrough of a project that my team and I have been developing for a couple of weeks and months. And everything that we talk about today, we will also recap next time, and then we might build on that and anything that we missed today, or if anyone wants to talk about some more aspects, we can cover that next time. And then also we're gonna have a Q&A session after this, so hit me with your questions when we're all finished.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I'm gonna start sharing my screen and we can get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ryan Butler, and I'm an Architect Product Specialist at Vectorworks. I'm here to speak with you about designing, documenting, and visualizing your project in Vectorworks. This is the first in a two-part series where I'll be walking you through the process of designing a project and showing you some interesting workflows to excel in your studio. Before we begin, here are some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the AIAS YouTube channel for on-demand viewing. Also, there will be a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar to talk about any questions you may have. Today's presentation will cover the following learning objectives. Understand various 3D modeling techniques to effectively design your projects. Discover the power of rendering tools available in Vectorworks to help visualize your designs. Learn how to create drawings from your 3D models to communicate your project's design intent, and review best practices for creating great presentations to impress your professors. Okay, let's get started. Today, I'm going to be moving around this model, and first I'd like to show you what it looks like more developed, and then I'll show you how we got here. When starting a new project, it's important to do some site analysis, research the bulk regulations like setbacks or height limits, and essentially locate your project. This project is located on Long Island in New York on a sandbar stretch of road with a water view. I did some research to find the rough estimate where the property line is by looking at images on the internet and taking GIS images via screenshots. Okay, so here I'm showing you images that I gathered from the internet showing those local lot lines, FEMA flood maps, and satellite images. You can do this by simply importing an image from Vectorworks, or you can just drag and drop it from your file explorer. You can also crop the image and change the transparency. Then I drew some lines on a specific property line class, as well as the setbacks and FEMA lines that I need to focus on. These tools here are in the basic tool set, which is on the left of the screen usually. And this has a lot of 2D tools similar to any other drafting software. Like for instance, the property line here is a polygon according to the object info palette, but I started with just drawing 2D lines and then selecting all those lines and then composing them to make one shape. You could also draw a rectangle and adjust the rectangle to be either longer or adjust an edge or vertice based on your liking. Before we move on, it's important to discuss what classes and layers are. Classes are like the what of an object. They have attributes like line weight, color, line type, and texture. Whereas layers in Vectorworks define the location, like height or scale. Examples of layers are first floor layer, site layer, second floor layer, and so on. And examples for classes could be furniture class, wall class, door class, reference image class, and so on. Classes and layers live in the navigation palette in Vectorworks, and that's usually at the bottom right of the screen. From here, you can see all of the classes and layers in a list. Classes are in a hierarchical organization, and from here you can turn classes off, gray them. You could do the same with layers, and you could also search for a certain class or layer. Another great tool is the survey point tool. This is a great tool when locating your project because you can apply a geo image to your project as well as correctly use the compass ring at the bottom left of your screen where the on-screen view control is. The survey point's pretty easy to place. All you have to do is invoke the tool, set your coordinates, and also the specific code based on the region. I chose Long Island because that's where the project is located, and then I just place the point. You can also set the angle to true north to get the correct orientation, and also reference points to be more specific. After you place the point, that point is locked in place, you can't move it, and then now your project is located properly. From here, you can check the geo image to make sure it lines up with your survey point and make sure everything lines up properly. This is very useful for visualizing the context in plan. Okay, let's start designing. Here I have two sketches I did showing a basic layout of how I want the house to look. And from here I can either start drawing in 2D with lines or start drawing with the wall tool. With 2D line work I can draw whatever shapes I want and then create walls instantly from those lines by doing the Create Objects from Shapes command. This is a neat tool to get going with walls really quickly. Or I can start drawing walls using the designated wall tool. The wall tool is pretty easy to use. It's in the Building Shell tool set, or you can press 9 on your keyboard. That's the shortcut. When you click the wall tool, your cursor changes, but if you look at the top of the application, you can see different modes of where and how you're going to draw the wall. This is by the edge of the wall, by the component, if you want to do it as a polygon or a rectangle, and then also if you wanted to do it as a curved wall or not. Now, the important thing over here is the wall style. Now, it's important to choose what type of wall you're going to draw with. Sometimes in the beginning, it might be easier to draw with a basic wall style. Now, wall styles and styled objects altogether are objects that save settings. So if you change the style of the wall, all instances of that wall in your project will change. So for example, if you change the thickness of the wall style, then all those walls will change thickness in the project. So it's a pretty streamlined process if you are editing walls altogether. So let's go to a basic generic wall when we first start out here. So I have a generic partition wall here. It says 4 inches wide, that's fine. Now, after I click that, I can just draw, click and drag, and click and drag, and so on. This is not what I want the wall to look like, or the walls to look like, but we can change that later on. Now notice that the wall is all connected together, and that's what it looks like in plan. You can change the thickness of the line weights according to the wall style, but as well as the class as well. Now, if I wanted to go and look at this in 3D as well, it's very easy to go from 2D to 3D and back in Vectorworks. You can either use the shortcuts on your keyboard. If you have a number pad, you can use the different projections like 2D plan, orthogonal, perspective. You could also change the view over here at the top of the screen here to do an isometric or front, left, right, back, and so on. But what I like to do is to use the on-screen view control as much as I can. It's pretty much a view cube where you can click and drag and see the wall, see the 3D objects in space very easily. And I can click this to go back to top. I could click this button here to go from 3D to 2D, and so on and so forth. If I click the edge here, it'll go to an angled view. If I go to the right, it'll go to the right, and so on. I can drag as well to get that better. Okay, so let's go back to 2D for a moment. And now let's start to edit these walls. So what if I don't like this wall? I could just delete it. And I don't really like this one either. I'll delete it. Now, if I wanted to connect these walls together, you could either click and drag, and if they don't meet like that, you can do the wall join tool, which is also in the building shell tool set, which is right here. And then you look at the mode up here. I want to do the L because that's what we're looking for right here, and then that closes everything. Also, there's a setting over on the right-hand side. It's a quick preference where you auto join walls. If that's on, and I draw walls like this, and then I go to here, you can see that it highlights red, and then I double click, and it automatically joined that wall. Now that's the same thing if I go over here and I click and drag, it will try to join as best as it can, but sometimes you need to just invoke the wall join tool anyway. Now we did an L shape here, there's an L shape here, let's do an L shape right there. Now let's do a T shape. So if we do a T shape, you just click this one up here, click this first, then this one, and then that's that. Now this is great for just quickly drawing walls to get your point across, to get your building laid out. Now also if you wanted to move the wall, you can do so and the walls will stay together. So let's say if you want to change this wall type to, or wall style to something else, to something more specific. Now you can do that by selecting the wall or selecting all the walls. And you can go over to Style in the Object Info palette. It says here that there's 7 walls selected. That's all the walls here. And we can replace these walls. From here, this window pops up. And here is a drop-down showing you a list of preloaded wall styles that are in Vectorworks. Now, Vectorworks has these libraries in a resource manager. This contains way more than just wall styles. It contains other objects like slabs, like roofs, windows, doors, furniture, textures, other objects as well, so that you have all of these assets to choose from when you're designing your project. Okay, so let's go and change this to a different wall style. I have a wall style that I made for this project. Let's go and change it to that one, and that's this one right here. So okay, so now this window comes up. Let's change this wall to here. This red line shows where the wall will line up. Let's just do it to inside, or outside rather, of the framing, and that's okay. Okay, cool. So now the walls have been replaced. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of cleaning up, and you might have to reverse the sides of the wall. So let's do that right now. So I will change the cursor to the wall join tool again. And then if you are in the wrong mode, you just click over here to there, to there, to there. Great. Now let's take a look at what it looks like in 3D. Cool. So now you could see that the wall has components and textures and other objects within the wall. It looks like a real wall, like insulation. It has rigid insulation. It has OSB sheathing, and then wood siding as well, and also gypsum wallboard. Okay, now from here you can reverse the wall to a different side. Let's reverse this one, and so on. So you have some sort of manipulation that you can do if you want. Okay, now to change wall styles to create a new wall style based on whatever preference you like, it's very easy to do. All you have to do is invoke the resource manager by pressing Control R or Command R. And when you do that, this window comes up over here. This window is pretty extensive, and here you can filter out types of resources. So let's go to Wall Styles. This is the one that we just used. The Resource Manager will populate based on the resources that you use. So now if you look on the left, I'm selected here, which is the file that we're in. But if you go to the Vectorworks libraries and you go to Building, Wall Styles, and one of these files here, you can start to see the types of wall styles that are already shipped with Vectorworks, that are already preloaded with Vectorworks. Okay, so let's go back to the ones that we have loaded in the project. Let's go to this one here. If you look, that's the same wall style here. You can see it matches here. But if I wanted to change this, or I wanted to create a new one, what I can do is I can duplicate this like so, and then this window comes up just to rename it. So let's just say that we want to make this the same name, but we're going to change it to 2x4. Okay, and that's right there. So now if I wanted to change it, I would just right click it, choose edit, and now you're in the settings of the wall style. So now this is where you could see the components. You could start to see the insertion options, like what class it's in, what the height is, certain textures. This one uses component textures, which is defined by over here, and then other data associated to it too. I have a description here. I could change this to 2x4 if I wanted to. But let's go to the definition. This is the main area here. Now this lists the components that make up the wall. So let's change the wood stud framing from 5.5 thickness to 3.5. Okay, so that's good. So now let's take a look at this first. So this setting window here tells you all the specific settings within this component in this wall. This is the top and bottom bound, the thickness, the name, the function, the graphic attributes, and so on. Now this has got thinner. You can see the preview, and then you press OK, and then that just updated. So now what we can do to close the resource manager, I just press Control R or Command R, and what we can do is we can either select this or start again, but let's just select it and replace to do replace. And this is the first one that comes up. We'll just click that one. And we'll do wood stud framing. Wood stud framing, we'll go to the left side and then the left side so that it matches up, the datum line matches up. And then there you go. And it just changed right away. And if you look in 3D, that's what that would look like. Okay. The best practice here is to take an existing wall style, whether it's from a previous project or if you're starting new, from the preloaded wall styles that are in the resource manager, and to build off of that and edit accordingly. There's a bunch to choose from. I'm using the wood framed ones because we're doing a residential home here. But there's other walls too, like concrete, there's conceptual, that's what we were doing before. There's curtain walls, there's masonry and other things too. So I'm going to delete this because I want to show you now what I came up with the overall floor plan of this building, of this house. Now this looks kind of detailed, but we'll break it down step by step. First thing I want to do is turn off some of the classes here and layers as well. So let's go to the grid and we'll turn that off, and then we'll also search for the furniture and turn that off as well.
Apologies, we had a technical difficulty. Just give us one moment.
Cool. Looking at this project, it's very simple when you look at the wall styles. and all the other insertions. It's that wall style we were dealing with before. It's the 2x6 wood siding. Then there's other wall styles that I have for interior walls, like a 2x4 one or 2x6. And then I also added some wall styles that have tile on the inside. And you can see that in 3D, like so. So you can see that tile there. So that's pretty straightforward. The way that I did that is simply by drawing a wall, whatever style it may be, and replacing it with a tile wall, like so. And you could see that the component is on the outside there. And then from here, what you can do is you can just join these walls together. It's important to be precise. So there are a couple of workflows that I use in order for that to happen. Now, I like to use the dimension tool on the keyboard. The shortcut is N, but in the DIMS and Notes tool set, I like to use either the unconstrained linear dimension or the constrained linear dimension. The constrained linear dimension tool is the one that I use mostly. That's the N shortcut. So when I have that selected, I could just very easily snap to whatever object there is. So for example, I could do the inside over the walls here, like that. I could do like this, and so on. And I could just delete them. I can go back and forth and delete them. Also, when I'm drawing, you could always just draw in 2D. For example, you could just draw a rectangle. Like that. And then you could draw a wall and snap to that geometry as well. So you can trace that if you like that shape. So that's very easy to get precise measurements. Now, when dealing with windows and doors, I tend to group those insertions together because they all go into walls. Let's take a look at these windows down here. All of the windows in this project are styled objects, meaning if I change the settings of one style, those instances of that window will also update. Now, also, if I move a window, the wall will heal itself. If I insert the window back in the wall, the insertion and the insert will go right into the wall. Now, to start inserting windows into your project, it's very simple. It's the building shell tool set, and there's a tool, the window tool. You select that tool and you go over to a wall and it starts to highlight red when you are close to it. And then you press once to click into that wall, and then here now it's going to show the handing of the window. You just click again, and then there's your window. Now, this window is unstyled, so there's all the settings are available to change in the object info palette. And then also you can do that in the settings window here. In doors and windows, they have similar settings. They have general settings, visualization, ID tag, configurations, and so on. And then other objects too, like trim or jam, as well as materials and classes, and then other objects as well. For this window, let's change the window to 3 feet wide. And then let's make this an awning window. Now, let's also make this show a marker. And we can also show it as open. Now in 3D you can see edit updates, and that's the other window in there before, but you could see this window here. That's what we just edited. Now this window here, let's take a look at it. Now this window is the same as the other windows that are right next to it. Let's change the projection to normal, and let's go back to our windows here. Okay, now this window, let's go to the settings. You could see when I go to a settings window of a styled window, a lot of the settings are grayed out. That's because I chose when I was setting up the plugin style, I chose this icon with the arrow to be by style. Now there's other ones here that show that are not grayed out and that have the by instance setting here. A lot of these are by style. Okay, now let's go to the edit style. So how do you get this window like this? This window is actually a awning window. You could see at the bottom here, and then also in the preview over here, with a transom at the top. This transom is here. Now, when you do that, you also add certain settings like this one, the spring, and then also the width and height and so on. You can also change the textures within objects like windows and doors and so on. So let's change the texture of the trim here. Let's go to Edit Plugin Style, and then we'll go to the Materials and Classes tab here. If we go to Exterior Trim, you can see here it says Wood, White, Oak, and then there's a class associated to it, and then the texture is Wood Oak. If we change this material to, let's do Cherry, press OK, and then that's fine. And then here, when I do texture, let's say revert to material. And then press OK. Okay, and then you could see that the trim, material, and texture changed. And you could see that it changed for those 4 windows because they are of the same style. Okay, now let's talk about doors. I have a couple of doors in this view here that are of different styles, and you could take a look at the settings as well. You can see here that doors have other settings such as lights, there's different leaves, lintels, just like windows, there's certain thresholds as well, and so on. But it's generally the same approach. Again, if you remove a door and then reinsert it, it's the same situation as a window. And in 3D, they look like so. You could also add hardware to doors, and that's in the settings. Like so. And you can choose from these ones, or you can add other ones as well. And then there's a preview as well. So if I did a residential entry knob, you could see it in the preview there. And let's press OK to see what that looks like. And there you go. Doors also have other settings like shim gaps and gaps between the floor and the leaf that can be set in the leaf settings. Now I like to keep some of these settings as by instance, for example, the shim gaps, because I like to show that from time to time without changing all of the doors in the style. So if I have this door selected, I hit all the style parameters. Let's go to the frame settings here. And if I wanted to use a shim gap of 1/2 of an inch, press OK. You can see that it's right there. And there you go. Okay, let's take a look at drawing slabs and modeling slabs. In the building shell tool set, there's a slab tool. When you click the slab tool, you can go with an unstyled slab or you can go with a styled slab. Let's go to first floor assembly slab style. Now, if you look at the mode bar up here, you can see pick mode, picked walls mode, vertex mode, inner boundary mode. I'm going to do vertex mode because I like to draw the slab on the outside of the framing of the wall. Okay. So this is that slab that we just created. This slab has a style. There's two components. This one shows the framing and then the decking. Now you can also add a finished floor as well. I chose not to. I like to break them up. I like to be more specific with it. So I just chose this one. Now I could take this, let's turn this one off. And you can see that this slab is under there as well. Now because this slab is on a slab layer, it's bound to a certain height. So when I draw it, it will be at the correct height because I set that in the layer settings. When cutting holes in slabs, like for stairs or for a slab opening, all you have to do is go to the clip tool in the basic tool set. And from here, you can draw a rectangle, you can draw a polygon, for example. You can draw a circle, and you can also apply it to the entire shape, or you can apply it to certain components of the slab. So let's do that for one of them, like so. And you can see it down there. Stairs are also plug-in objects, and the tool lives in the building shell tool set. Click the tool, click it once to place the stair, and then another time to orient the stair, and then your stair is placed here. You can go in the settings to change the height, the width. You can change the riser heights. You can turn off and on railings. You could also change the construction, like adding stringers to the outside or have stringers underneath. You could change the 2D graphics to show the walk line, also the number of treads. And you could also change the graphic attributes according to 2D line work as well as 3D texture and 3D materials. Let's take a look at the stair that I already placed before. The stair has this height, it has a tread depth of 10 inches, and then sometimes when you put in a tread depth of a certain amount matched with the height, you can lock a certain parameter, and then the riser height would change accordingly to fit the actual stair geometry. This is a straight stair, it goes straight up, there's no kinks or no turns. Now with the 2D graphics, I decided to make this dotted when it's shown as above. There's a break line, and then there's also an arrow. And you could choose that over here by choosing break dashed above, and then also a walk line below the stair break. You could do pointing up or pointing down. Let's do pointing up. The construction is a solid stair. You could choose to have stringers underneath. When you do stringers underneath, it could be however many you want, but let's just do solid. Railings are off on this one. And then for graphic attributes, I chose to have the treads and risers on a certain class. Same thing with these other attributes here. When adjusting graphic attributes, it's important to take a look at the classes that you set. For example, this one is finish wood floor. Let's make this a different one, just for argument's sake. And then for here, for texture, you can change it to class texture, or you can override it to a different texture. And now you can see that that changed. Now these textures are by class settings. So if you went to that class and edited that class, you could see that this is that texture. If we made it green and pressed OK, now that would change as well. So there's different ways to change textures. You can also search for additional textures in the Resource Manager by filtering for Renderworks textures and then typing in a texture like wood, for example. There are other ways to import textures as well. You can do that from the internet, and you can import textures from mTexture, which is embedded in Vectorworks as well. And you could search for textures in their interface. To create a viewport of a drawing or a view that you like in order to print eventually or to use in a presentation, what you would do is create a viewport. Go to View, Create Viewport, and then on this window shows up where you decide where you want to place that viewport, what the visibilities would be, what the scale is, and then also what the projection would be. In this case, I want to do a 2D plan, but you could also do perspectives. You could also do other views as well. Let's change this to Design Board 3 and press OK. So I already have viewports on this sheet, but this is the viewport that I just made. It's a floor plan. And when you have a viewport, you can select it. You could change the scale always. You could change it to a 1/2 inch, for example, and it would automatically just jump to that scale. You could also double click and crop the viewport. Maybe I don't want this over here, so let's just crop it. And then also you can annotate your drawing by going to the annotation space of your viewport. And here is where you can draw notes. You could also do dimensions like so. You could write text. And you can draw any other 2D object that you want in the annotation space. So we placed this viewport on a sheet layer. This one is called Design Board 3, but I also have others here. Like so. That have other viewports. They also have images and other types of viewports as well. Now, the sheets here can be edited. You can change the name, but you could also change the size. You could change this to any size you want. Let's make this a little bit longer. And now that sheet is a little bit longer. So you can make your design boards as big as you want or as small as you want. To create a viewport of a 3D view, first you would have to set the 3D view. You can also set other settings to adjust lighting and maybe textures or how the view would look. You can do that with the shaded view render mode settings. You could turn off object reflections, environment reflections, and you could see subtle differences. You could also change the environment lighting. You could turn off edges, colors or textures. You can also change camera options like depth of field. You could focus the distance. You could change the exposure. And then what you do is create a viewport from that. And this is the same window as before when dealing with viewports. And then your viewport is here. And let's bring it over to here. And we can update the viewport. To show a design plan like the floor plan below here, I used data visualization to poche the walls black and also show a floor pattern. Data visualization allows you to override typical aspects that currently make up class appearance. They can be applied to viewports, but also views within your design space as well. So I have two applied here. Let's turn them off and then turn them back on to see the differences. Now let's put them back on. Let's just put on the first one and see how to create one. When you edit a data visualization or decide to create one, this window comes up. The first step is to define the criteria. This one's pretty simple. I just chose all the criteria in the project and all objects. You can change this with drop-down arrows. And then I decided to organize this criteria by class. So then I just went down to the classes that I want to override. Like for example, this post, these are the posts over here, but let's go down to other ones like the walls. Now, all of the classes that I have in the wall components, like the finished siding, the sheathing, the insulation, the air cavity, the gypsum board, I applied an override to that by checking here and then overriding the fill to a solid black fill and a pen of a solid black pen. And I did that for all the components for walls. And there's a bunch of other ones as well. So when you do that, then this happens. This override happens to the components of those classes. Now, for the other data visualization, I did the same situation, but instead of organizing by class, I did object style name. So we have slab styles. So that's the criteria that I want to show in this list here. So the three finish floor styles that I have, wood floor finish, the decking, and the tile floor, I overrided to show these different hatches and fills. So for the tile, for example, I created a tile, or I chose a tile, and I chose this one. And you can also override the opacity to make it a little bit lighter in color or a little bit lighter in the transparency so that it's a little more subtle. Data visualization is great for overriding certain graphic attributes for your viewports so you can get a presentation drawing very quickly. Sheet layers are good for both laying out viewports but also for presentations. Right now I have a couple of images here that show some site analysis, and with every image that you place you can resize them easily, but you can also apply image effects to them where you can change the saturation, you could change other settings like shadows or contrast or exposure. You can apply a ton of images on a sheet layer and you could resize them, and you could also change the transparency as well for different effects. Now I have 4 boards here and I'd like to create PDFs from them. To do that, what you would do is go to File, Publish, and then this window would come up. Now this window shows sheet layers that are in the project already on the left side. And then these sheet layers over here are the sheet layers that you want to publish. So let's start new, and let's go down to the 4 design boards that we have over here and add them to the list. Now there's other settings on this list here where if you wanted to do it in color, if you wanted to change it from a PDF to just printing, or a CAD file, or an image file. There's other settings in here too to change DPI, and if you want to make them as separate files or one continuous file. This looks good, so let's do it. And this is the result, a continuous PDF. Important thing to note, when you are working in Vectorworks, what you see is what you get. So if I am drafting in Vectorworks or I'm modeling in Vectorworks and I see plans that look like this, or if I go to my plans over here and they look like this is what you see when you print out the drawing, when you get the PDF. You don't have to go and do test prints. What you see is what you get. In the next session, I'll walk you through more interiors related tools, like the countertop tool and the cabinet tool. We'll go over how to create cabinets and save them as styled objects, as well as countertops, and discuss the design capabilities with each. We'll also talk about placing lights and furniture symbols in the project, and also custom hybrid symbols, which are so important so that you can model specific 3D objects within your project while having control over the 2D line work. We'll cover saved views and how to use them for organization as well as for presentations, and how to create realistic renderings and other drawings like building sections. And don't forget to visit our education page at vectorworks.net/education to download a free student license. There's also information for the Vectorworks Student to Pro program and Vectorworks University, which contains a collection of videos, learning paths, and sample files. Thanks everyone, and I welcome your questions.
So I hope everyone had or liked that video. That was a brief intro on how to get going in Vectorworks. There's so many tools within Vectorworks, and I really just touched on a bunch of little things to get you going. There's a lot of settings per every tool, like windows and doors, for example, and you could spend days inside these settings. But once you get one window style or door style down, then you can start to build off of that too. And the same goes with walls and so on and so forth. So the next session will get even more detailed and even more involved with certain things, like what I was saying before. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Okay, so Julia is talking about plugins for GIS stuff, and then she also is talking about here visualization, like with line weights, and is there a workflow with Illustrator and Photoshop? Okay, so first up with GIS stuff, that is all in Vectorworks. It's all there for you. We in the 2025 version of Vectorworks, we actually just introduced this survey point tool, which I showed you before, which will locate your project perfectly in the world. We've had other GIS tools as well, and we've had that for a while, but everything is baked in with Vectorworks, like locating your project and also the geo image and other things like that too. So what you would do is you would go through those tools. You can also connect to like ArcGIS or other websites. I think OpenStreetMap is on there as well too. So there's a bunch of stuff to go through, and there's webinars about that too. So I would check that out on Vectorworks University. As far as visualization and other workflows like bringing it into Photoshop or Illustrator, I typically don't do that. My biggest thing with school, when I was in school like you guys, I hated doing that. I hated going from each program to program because it would take time and so on and so forth. So when I learned about Vectorworks, I tried to get everything done in Vectorworks as much as possible. And then I would see how it would print out. And also what you see is what you get. Graphics in Vectorworks is really great because you don't have to keep doing those test prints, and you don't have to create the like a CTB file for AutoCAD. So I think that is fantastic. As far as doing that workflow, you definitely can. You can export your drawings as DWGs, and you can bring that into Photoshop, or you can bring the PDF into Photoshop or Illustrator to manipulate even further. I haven't done that though. I typically try to do it all in Vectorworks. Okay. Jim says, I have a collection of Revit models. I'm new to Vectorworks. Can I use these in the workflow? Yes, you absolutely can. Vectorworks has a ton of import and export options, and you can bring in Revit models as well. So what you can do with those models is just simply go to File, Import, and you could see the list of everything. I typically don't do Revit importing. I like to use like an OBJ or a Rhino model or a SketchUp model. But you can do all of it for any file type. Now, the best way to find even more models like that is you can just go on the internet and download that file and import it to Vectorworks. Or you can search in the resource manager for certain objects, like a toilet, for example, or a faucet or sink. Okay. Okay.
Kim answered
Jordan
the
says,
YouTube
okay.
question. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Kim answered the YouTube question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Jordan says, I apologize if you cover this. Are there rendering softwares compatible with Vectorworks? Yeah, there are. So there is the rendering engine that we have within Vectorworks. We're going to cover that next time. But I briefly showed you what Vectorworks can do with the shaded render mode. That's like an instant rendering thing and a rendering view. You can also do RenderWorks, which takes a little bit more time, but it's still instant. It's still like maybe 5 minutes to cook a really great rendering. If you wanted to use other softwares like Enscape, for example, we have a direct link to Enscape. So if I were to have Vectorworks open on one window, I could have a live viewport into Enscape with that as well. I actually did a webinar a couple months ago on that link with Enscape and Vectorworks, and I used this project to talk about it. It's very easy to do. It's a very instant rendering software. There's other ones too. I think we also have a link with Twinmotion, and you can export to other options as well too.
Perfect. If we don't have any more questions, I think we're going to start to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you, Jen, for being here as well. It is always amazing seeing all the features that Vectorworks has and just how convenient it is to work with one single program. I know that one thing that I struggle with a lot is the file size of things. When trying to export and import the different programs, it eventually starts to pile up and it becomes a mess. So
And
that's
and you do like that at the 11th hour right before your review, and everything just crashes. I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, if we can avoid that, that's ideal, and
Yeah.
it's great to see how Vectorworks can help us with that. So it's definitely worth checking out the Vectorworks website and also the education page, Vectorworks University. And also just a reminder to all our attendees that we do have free license, Vectorworks license for students. So I definitely invite you all to take advantage of that. And yeah, are there any last words, conclusions, Ryan?
Thank you all for coming. And again, this is the first part of a two-part series, and we're going to go even further next time around. I think the next version, the next webinar that we're going to have is going to be very visual, so it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time around. Thank you.
Bye, guys.